Good morning, everyone. So, there was this rather old-fashioned lady from Kansas who was, despite being rather old-fashioned in the way that she liked to speak with such politesse, had a somewhat adventuresome spirit. One day, she decided that she was going to plan a solo camping vacation down in Florida. So in her old-fashioned way, she decides, I'm going to write a letter to the owner of one of the local campgrounds down in Florida. And so she proceeds to whip out her beautiful fountain pen and starts handwriting a letter. Her objective is to make a reservation, but first inquire as to the amenities at this campground. More specifically, she wants to know, is there a toilet in the vicinity, in the area? So, but as she starts writing the word toilet, she pauses and she shakes her head and she realizes, I can't do this. I don't want to write the word toilet. So let me think about what might be a better term to use that I might be more comfortable with. And so she deliberates for quite a while, thinking about this. And she realizes, oh yes, there's another old-fashioned word or term, and that term is bathroom commode. She's like, perfect, bathroom commode. So what she started to write is, I would like to inquire as to the location of your bathroom commode. And so she writes this beautiful letter out. And then after she's finished writing, she's like, no, this won't do. I can't even write bathroom commode to someone. And so let me rethink this. How about I just abbreviate it? So I'm going to write BC. So she tears up the whole letter that she wrote and then rewrites a whole nother letter in which she inquires about the location of their BC. So the campground owner receives this beautifully written letter, really appreciates it, and thinks this is the kind of person, that I would like to have stay at our campgrounds. And I would like to treat her with the same kind of formality and respect that she's treated me, so I'm going to write her a letter back. But the problem is, I'm kind of stumped. I have no idea what she means by BC. And so he stops and he ponders this for several days, feeling a little anxious that he hasn't replied to this woman yet. BC. What on earth could this possibly stand for? Finally, he decides, I'm going to ask the people here. So he walks around from campsite to campsite and he inquires, what do you think BC is? And nobody there has any idea what this could possibly mean. And so he's fretting. So he pauses, he takes a breath. And then, as he pauses, as he takes a breath, a moment of insight hits him, and he realizes, oh my goodness, how could I have not thought this before? BC clearly refers to the Baptist church nearby. What a relief. So I'm going to write her a letter to tell her about the local BC, and I got a copy of this letter. I want to read it verbatim. So he writes back to this lady, Dear Madame, I regret very much the delay in answering your letter, but I now take pleasure of informing you that the BC is located 9 miles north of the campsite and is capable of seating 250 people at one time. I admit, it is quite a distance away if you are in the habit of going regularly. But no doubt you will be pleased to know that a great number of people take their lunches along and make a day of it. They usually arrive early and they stay late. The last time my wife and I went was 6 years ago. And it was so crowded, we had to stand up the whole time we were there. It may interest you to know that right now, there is a supper planned to raise money to buy more seats. They plan to hold the supper in the middle of the BC so everyone can watch and talk about this great event. Last two paragraphs. I would like to say, it pains me very much not to be able to go more regularly. But it is surely not for lack of desire on my part. But as we grow older, it seems to be more and more of an effort, particularly in cold weather. And finally, he says, if you decide to come down to the campground, perhaps I could go with you the first time you go. Sit with you and introduce you to all the other folks. This is really a very friendly community. Sincerely, the campground manager. So, communication mishaps seem to be a regular and perhaps even inevitable part of our everyday human existence, right? Communication mishaps. And it is a delight when we can hold it lightly. Laugh at ourselves. It's much easier to laugh at others when it's happening and we can see it from the outside point of view and know what's actually going on. But of course, there is this level at which being able to laugh at ourselves is so important in the midst of inevitable miscommunications and misunderstandings in our everyday lives. At the same time, at least for me, communication, miscommunication, confusion, misunderstandings between coworkers, between bosses and their employees, between parents and children, between friends, between spouses and partners, can be some of the most painful parts of our everyday lives. Many of you know that I'm a trained mediator, and for several years before getting my call to ministry, I practiced family law mediation. And I just remember distinctly in the midst of my training, my surprise when I was taught that the bulk of human conflicts, interrelational conflicts, was not the product of actual conflict or difference, but the product of failure of communication, of misunderstanding. And so the mediator's job was to repair communication, to repair connection, to repair the listening, the deep listening that has to happen so that we can truly understand it, hear first and foremost what we are saying, and then what the other side is saying. But that shocked me, this idea that it's actually not a real difference that is at the core of most of our conflict with one another, but misunderstanding. So today, as we focus on a season, move into a season that is primarily about peace and love and joy, it feels important for me to talk about messages. The messages that we send and the messages that we receive, how we hear things and what we hear and what we hear from, how we send things, how we word things, how we presence things, and what that comes from. So today, messages. I want to speak about this topic in a threefold manner. First, I'd like to explore the idea that each and every one of you is a messenger. Even if you are not formal, paid messengers like teachers or ministers or postmen, but that each of us is a messenger in the world. First point. Second, I want to explore the idea that your words are ultra important. But actually, it's your entire life that is your message. Your entire presence that is your message. And so the question is, being more aware of that, what will your message be? And then finally, I'd like to explore the idea that based on most of the world's religious and spiritual traditions, there is a calling for each and every one of us, not just the ministers, each and every one of us to be messengers of God. And by God, I don't necessarily mean to refer to some man in the sky, but God as truth, God as love, God as peace, that we are called to be messengers of light. In traditional Christianity, we call it messengers of God. In more esoteric Christianity, it's messengers of light, of love, of that energetic being. So threefold. So I want to begin by just inviting the consideration again that each and every one of you is already a messenger, even though you might not formally be called to it in your vocation, as Reverend Sandra and Duke and I are. But as I ponder this idea that we're all messengers, of course, I will turn first to look at my colleagues and think about the messages that they have shared with us recently. So I think about the message that Sandra shared with us just 2 Sundays ago. 2 Sundays ago, she talked about the Fifth Agreement by Don Miguel Ruiz. The Fifth Agreement is the follow-up to the book, The Four Agreements. And it struck me as I was listening to this beautiful message that what really showed up for me around the theme that she was seeking to convey, the theme that I heard, was that of listening. The Fifth Agreement is this: be skeptical, but listen, right? Be open to listening. And Sandra reminded us that by listening, what we really mean is not just listening to my words. As she shared, each of us as ministers just will stumble over our words. We might speak the wrong words. We might forget the words we were about to speak. We speak imperfectly. But our hope is that if we come here and speak from our hearts, that you will also listen from your heart, for the heart of what is being said, even if we stumble over our words. And so deep listening. And so I think about that, even as a part of us being messengers, that when we show up in a place, the message we send when we are a deep listener, a listener from the heart, a listener for heart, for someone else's heart. And then last week, even though I wasn't able to be here, as I listened to Duke's message on our YouTube channel, I heard, wow, this powerful theme of courageous conversations that Sandra brought up 2 weeks before was being continued by Duke, in that he brought up themes that we do not normally talk about here in church: sexual harassment, violence, gun control, and social inequality, themes of social justice. And I was so touched and proud of Duke's invitation to come to the table, right? This message of Okay, yes, so we start with this listening ear, and there's so much hurt going on in the world right now. But if good people aren't willing to come to the table, the left and the right, this not being about politics, this about being our willingness to be with one another in solution generation with one another by deep listening. And so as I heard these two talks, it was natural for me to move into the next stage. It was like listening, coming to the table, and then now, once you come to the table, what will your message be? Of course, we come to the table in many ways, right? Coming to the table might be literally sitting down at that Thanksgiving or upcoming Christmas dinner table, fully showing up, being available, being present. Coming to the table might mean showing up in your courage to ask your boss for a raise. Coming to the table might be reaching out to a neighbor who has been experiencing bullying or some other form of prejudice. Coming to the table might mean a deep act of self-assertion and self-care for yourself. So coming to the table can mean different things for each of us. But what I encourage you to consider is that it means showing up fully for the life that's already here. To really show up and understand that you are called to be a messenger, and your actions and your words in every moment attest to that. And next point, your life is your message, in that sitting here, I might ask you this question. If you had this platform, what message would you deliver? If you could come up here on stage and share a message that testified to what you value, what would you say? What would your theme be? That's one way of looking at what are you a messenger of through your life. But perhaps a deeper way of approaching it is, if you were to come up here and preach that message, is your life preaching that message? Do you need to come up here, or sitting in your chair in this moment? What is your body language saying? What is your heart radiating? Is it radiating fear, hate, resentment? Or is it radiating love, peace, compassion? What kind of messenger are you? If your life is your message, what kind of messenger are you in this moment? And even as I ask that question, it is so important, I feel, to communicate the fact that, especially here in Unity, we're not about the shoulds. It's not like, oh, you should be preaching peace and you should be preaching joy with your life. More, it's about checking in with yourself and checking in to see if you are in integrity with your own being. Do you feel that sense of wholeness that comes from, I am a witness, my life testifies to what I believe, my energy testifies, my body, my actions, my words, all of it. And because we're human, when I check in compassionately with myself and I realize I'm a little bit off the mark, that I can compassionately decide to realign myself. So my talk today was actually also inspired by Don Miguel Ruiz's book, The Fifth Agreement. And it is in one of his chapters on this that he asks this very question, what are you a messenger of? And he says this, though, always remember, you are the force that's creating everything in existence. You are the force that opens a flower and moves the clouds and the earth and the stars and the galaxies. Whatever your message, love yourself anyway, because of what you are, because you respect what you are. You don't have to be different unless you decide that you love yourself so much that you are no longer satisfied with the kind of messenger you are right now. And with that, I want to share a somewhat humbling story of my own around last Thanksgiving and realizing that I wasn't being the kind of messenger that I would like to be. So this was just a few days ago, so it's a little bit raw still. But so imagine this. This is what's happening for me on Thanksgiving. A few days before Thanksgiving, my husband tells me, oh, we're going over to Mom's for Thanksgiving. I'm like, oh, okay, good to know. That was our plans. You know, there's already a little bit of, oh, did you ask me? You know, so there's a little bit of that going on, a little twitch. But I'm like, oh, this sounds good. We were invited to a couple other friends' homes, and I thought, you know, I really need a lot of silence this week, a lot of time to myself, and this simple Thanksgiving would be ideal, so wonderful. So I kind of surrendered into this idea, and I missed his mom and his little dog, Abby, and so this was going to be good. So the morning of, he tells me the time it's going to be, and it's going to be noon, which is pretty early. And so he says, what we're going to do, because none of us cook, is I'm going to run to Boston Market and buy some takeout, and we'll just bring it over to Mom's, and we'll just have a nice early Thanksgiving. I said, great, and how sweet of you to go run the errand, and then he's going to come back and pick me up. So I thought, well, that's very nice. And so he even bothered asking me. He said, well, what kind of meat do you prefer? He's like, I like white meat, and so I said, well, I prefer ham, actually, and my second favorite choice is dark meat. So he goes on off to Boston Market, and I'm happily at home going, I can get stuff done while waiting, and he comes back. And so we drive on over to his mom's. It's about half an hour away. And we arrive. I get the bag of Boston Market goods out, and I go to the kitchen counter in the middle, and I thought, I'm going to make a pretty spread. And I'm going to help out while Victor's helping his mom out with something else. And I take out some of the items, and I put down this, yum, you know, vegetables, good for us. You know, I pull out, oh, sweet potatoes. I love sweet potato casserole. It's like my favorite. And so sweet potatoes. And then I pull out this big vat of white meat turkey. And I thought, oh, did you get all white meat? Turkey? And turkey? You know, kind of like that. And he said, oh, yeah, well, they didn't have anything else. I said, oh, okay. So, you know, we just continue to put stuff out, and I realized that part of the struggle that happened for me at Thanksgiving was that there were a few unwelcome and uninvited guests that happened to show up. And of course, the problem for me at this point was that I couldn't send them away because they were all right here in my own head. At this point, a few other guests showed up. And these were not the polite and sweet Nhien, you know, kinds of guests. They were more like, really? Why did you bother asking me for what I wanted if you weren't going to deliver? You know, my family back in California does this amazingly large Thanksgiving where like 10 different people cook. And, you know, so these stories, I understand these are first world problem stories, you know, but they're in my head. And of course, the superficial version is that I'm just grumpy, and there's a part of me that's like, well, you have a right to be upset, da 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 da, you know, kind of attitude. But deeper within me, I could tap into this experience of, you know what? Have I ever had a Thanksgiving that I felt like was really just joyful and happy and for me, where I could feel like just supported, like that my needs mattered. That's what got triggered for me. Oh, well, I wasn't even asked. And then I was asked, and then, they didn't even get me what I wanted. My needs don't matter. That kind of got triggered. So there's part of you that says, see, this is never going to work out. Family stuff sucks. Like it was like going all there, all in my head, while I was smiling and politely, putting the stuff on the counter. And then, on top of that, I go, oh, honey, where are the mashed potatoes? And he's like, oh, well, Mom doesn't eat mashed potatoes. I'm like, I had this, who doesn't eat mashed potatoes for Thanksgiving? And so the voice just, but it was at this point all in my head. But I remembered that the message that I bring to any moment isn't just what I say. Inside, I was like this. We'll see about this Thanksgiving. We'll see if we're going to have fun at all this Thanksgiving. Prove it. I'm not so sure now. I mean, all this stuff about traumatic Thanksgivings had come up where, I was alone in my own head. Nobody loved me. Oh, we'll see. So inside, I could feel. Outside, oh, here we go, honey. Here we go. Inside, I was like, oh. But I was aware of it. And being aware of it, I had a choice point. And I realized this, that number one, everything I preach is about the fact that our happiness does not need to be dependent on outer circumstances. I kindly reminded myself of that in this moment. What if you could be happy and peaceful and satisfied and fulfilled in this moment? And in doing so, you could actually be a radiance of joy and of peace and of love. Is that even a possibility for you in this moment? Are you willing? I ask myself. What message are you sending? Because even though you're not talking, you know that energetically you are sending a message about what is available and okay for this moment of your life. And in this choice point, I stopped. And I said, you know what? All of this stuff isn't true. Like the reason I'm upset is because I feel like I'm not respected and I'm not loved. That's not even true in this relationship. I'm telling myself a pack of lies, and Don Miguel Ruiz calls this mitote, M-I-T-O-T-E, our illusion. And so there is where the moment of possible freedom happened, where I could be aware that I could now be a messenger of truth. And the truth is, my peace exists independent of what's going to happen here. And the truth is, every moment is for me. If I believe in this idea, this notion we teach in Unity that God is good, that life is for us, then this moment, despite all appearances, was for me. So was I going to receive it or not? Was I going to be available to show up for it or not? And I chose to be. And the beauty of what unfolded was this, that yeah, the food was meh, but I gotta tell you, my husband whips out his guitar. And in the 3 years that I've known his mother, I knew that she used to professionally sing, but she had never sung before. Well, in the ease and joy and presence of all of us together, Victor starts playing his guitar, and his mama started singing with him. And I sat there, and I said, this is what I've always wanted. The beauty of this just kind of heartfelt family being together. Had I been holding on to a resentment, I would have still been like this, looking at them playing their music. And instead, I allowed myself to receive and give the loving space that was there. And it got even better. I feel like Abby the dog just favored me in this moment. Like she could feel, and she just runs up to me and, just snuggles up to me while the others are playing music and I'm definitely not singing. And then we take Abby for a walk and it's just a little family bliss. And frankly, it was phenomenal because we ate early and I got to go home and have the whole rest of the day to myself, which I would have not in my family of 50 people celebrating Thanksgiving together. And so receiving the blessings of all that. And so I share this with you as a reminder that in each moment we testify to what we believe. And we testify not merely through our words, but through how we show up. If we believe that good is this fabric of life, then can it be here in this moment, not just to be received, but to be given, to be shared, to be welcomed. So, I want to close with my final point for today, which is, I'll share a quote from Ruiz's book. He says, "You are always delivering a message to everyone and everything around you, but mainly, you are always delivering a message to yourself." What is the message? A short story about this. A young man and his father went hiking up a mountain seeking wisdom. And near the top, the father said, "Hey, son, why don't you yell out and see if anyone is out there?" And so the little boy yelled, "Hello!" And he hears back, "Hello!" And curious, he yells back, "Who are you?" And he hears back, "Who are you?" When he hears that, he gets upset, and he gets angered at the response, and he screams, "You're an idiot!" And he hears back, "You're an idiot!" He looks to his father and asks, "Hey, what's going on?" And the father explained, "You're hearing an echo, son, and much of life is like this. The message that we send out is the message that comes back to us. The message that we send out through our presence is the message that comes back to us. So yes, in our everyday lives, we will continue to have communication mishaps where our message is not accurately received by the other, and we will continue to receive messages inaccurately by the other. But the most important aspect is that we become the recipients of our own message. And so the most important thing to consider in what message are you delivering is the idea that you're the one listening. So I'll close with that idea and invite you to consider at this time of meditation now how you might listen not to the voices that attest to lack and limitation, not to the voices that attest to fear, but the voices in your own heart that speak to belonging, to unity, and to love. I invite us to go now into a time of meditation.